They don't hate you because you are unqualified. They hate you because you are actually dangerous. Imagine a world where your results matter far more than the fancy paper hanging on your wall. The credentialed class has spent decades building a fortress designed to keep the uninitiated outside their gates. Why does a piece of paper worth 6 figures feel so incredibly fragile next to your results? You carry a shadow resume built on real-world victories that no university can ever hope to replicate. This creates a primal fear within establishment institutions that see your success as a direct existential threat. Machiavellian gatekeepers realize that if you succeed without them, their entire hierarchy begins to crumble instantly. They are like gatekeepers holding a heavy iron key to a door that simply no longer exists. Acquiring a traditional degree or pedigree today can easily cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. This staggering price tag traps many in a sunk cost fallacy they can never truly escape from. An employee with a prestigious degree often carries massive debt and an institutional reputation to uphold. While they struggle with external expectations, you operate with a powerful and unwavering internal locus of control. This is the ultimate battle of virtue versus fortuna, where skill finally triumphs over mere blind luck. Your beginner's mind allows you to see opportunities that those blinded by tradition will always miss. When the unqualified start winning, the validity of every expensive credential on earth is suddenly called into question. They cannot compete with someone who learns for the love of the game rather than a title. Their systems were never meant to handle individuals who refuse to follow the standard script of life. Their hatred is not a sign of your failure, but a ringing endorsement of your rising power. Take a moment to realize that your independence is the very thing they fear the most. But to understand why they fear you, we have to look at the cages they built for us. These structures were carefully designed to contain your potential from the moment you turned 5 years old. School wasn't designed to teach you how to think. It was designed to teach you how to wait. Think back to your first day of school when you were only 5 years old. At age 5, you entered a system specifically engineered to reshape your primal curiosity into compliance. While you studied math and reading, the hidden curriculum was busy teaching you something far more permanent. Did you learn to solve real problems? Or did you learn to ask to use the restroom? Educational institutions prioritize teaching you how to function within a rigid hierarchy rather than how to think. Like a domesticated animal waiting for a whistle, you were trained to look upward for every instruction. This training prepared you for a modern world that is built entirely on the concept of permission. You were taught that progress only happens when the gatekeepers decide you are finally ready to move. This system creates a credentialed class that values the certificate more than the actual skill it represents. The credentialed class is taught to respect the title more than the individual's actual capability. Most people fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy, defending a system just because they spent decades inside. You cling to your degrees because the alternative, admitting they were cages, is too painful to accept. There is a Machiavellian efficiency in how schools replace your internal locus of control with external validation. Losing your internal locus of control means you stop trusting your own judgment and start seeking approval. By outsourcing your validation, you become a cog in a machine you didn't even choose to build. You became a high-achieving passenger in a vehicle where someone else always holds the steering wheel. Whose hierarchy are you currently climbing, and who decided that it was the only path to success? While you climb their ladder, you forget that the ladder itself is owned by someone else. You were taught to wait for fortuna or luck instead of developing the virtue to create your own. They never told you that a shadow resume of self-taught skills is often more valuable than any degree. The system actively works to kill the beginner's mind, replacing wonder with a fear of being wrong. We live in a world where permission is a dirty word used to keep the dangerous people quiet. Breaking free requires unlearning the very first lesson you were ever taught in a classroom. This is the hidden curriculum at work, and it produces a very specific kind of person. While the system produces obedient dogs, the wild produces something else entirely. The credentialed dog waits for a treat. The self-taught wolf hunts for his own meal. In the shadows of traditional institutions, a new class of independent learners is quietly emerging. These individuals don't wait for permission to master complex subjects, like high-level software coding. They dive into the intricacies of finance and engineering without ever stepping foot inside a classroom. For them, psychology isn't just a degree, but a tool for understanding the hidden mechanics of influence. They are building what we call a shadow resume, composed of real skills rather than empty titles. This shadow resume represents a direct challenge to the authority of the established credentialed class. Why ask for a seat at the table when you can simply build your own room? The gatekeepers of the old world look at these self-taught rebels with a mixture of fear and confusion. To a bureaucrat, a person who cannot be managed by a performance review is a dangerous anomaly. Managers feel threatened when their traditional tools of control no longer hold any psychological leverage. Academics often resent those who bypass the expensive hurdles they spent decades trying to clear. These institutions are built on the sunk cost fallacy, demanding you value the time you wasted. But the self-taught mind operates on a different frequency, driven by a powerful internal locus of control. They embrace a beginner's mind, seeing opportunities where the experts only see established protocols and rules. It is a Machiavellian realization. The most effective way to win is to stop playing their game. Instead of waiting for Fortuna to smile, they cultivate the virtue necessary to seize their own destiny. Would you rather be managed by someone else's expectations or become entirely unmanageable? By declaring independence from validation systems, you reclaim the power to define your own worth. This shift isn't just about learning. It is an act of defiance against the failing hierarchy. While others collect debt and certificates, you are collecting the raw materials of true sovereignty. The credentialed class relies on a system that is rapidly losing its monopoly on specialized knowledge. You are no longer a student waiting for a grade, but a practitioner hunting for results. This independence is the ultimate threat to those whose power depends on your ongoing compliance. But choosing the path of the wolf requires a different kind of weaponry. 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli identified the exact reason why modern degrees are failing you. To survive the modern corporate landscape, we must look to the father of dark strategy himself. In his masterpiece, The Prince, he reveals a lethal distinction between mercenary forces and a leader's own soldiers. This classic strategic divide perfectly mirrors the gap between institutional education and the power of being self-taught. Your university degrees are merely mercenary knowledge, borrowed and learned by rote to serve someone else's empire. Like a hired soldier, this credentialed class operates on rented skills that vanish when the pay stops. Is your knowledge truly your own, or are you just leasing it from an outdated academic institution? This Machiavellian insight warns that relying on mercenary strength leaves you vulnerable to the fickle gatekeepers. When the economy shifts, these borrowed tactics crumble, exposing the terrifying truth of the sunk cost fallacy. But the self-taught man possesses what Machiavelli calls virk, a unique blend of prowess and raw effectiveness. Unlike the rote memorization of the classroom, this virtue is forged through the fires of survival and adaptation. It is the difference between a soldier with his own sword and one carrying a borrowed pike. While you struggle to build your virke, the elite rely on fortuna, inheriting their positions through pure luck. They hide behind inheritance and established status, hoping their luck never runs dry in a changing world. The clash of virtue versus fortuna defines who will thrive and who will be crushed by history. Do you have the internal locus of control to master your own fate, or are you waiting? Machiavelli famously stated that it is better to be impetuous than cautious when dealing with fortune's chaos. A beginner's mind allows you to strike while the credentialed class is still reading the rulebook. Your shadow resume is built on this ruthless adaptability, making you dangerous to those who play safe. This dark strategy transforms your self-education into a weapon that no institution can ever take away. If your knowledge is borrowed, your power is temporary, but if it is earned, you are invincible. 90% of the modern world is a performance, a ritual designed to protect a hidden professional cartel. If results are what truly matter, you must ask why these expensive institutional rituals still exist today. You aren't just paying for an education. You are paying for admission into a protected and elite class. Credentialing bodies like universities and certification boards act as gatekeepers, intentionally limiting who can enter the market. They create artificial scarcity to keep labor prices high, ensuring the credentialed class maintains its financial dominance. This is the Machiavellian strategy of building a moat around a profession to keep all outsiders at bay. Professional cartels have existed for centuries, evolving from ancient guilds into the modern medical and legal associations. The Medical Guild and the Bar Association control the supply of experts to inflate the value of membership. Even the academic tenure track is a fortress designed to protect those who have already reached the inside. For the institutional elite, their power comes from fortuna, the luck of birth, and the privilege of permission. They fear your virtue because your internal locus of control threatens their entire system of artificial barriers. Many stay trapped in this system because of the sunk cost fallacy, refusing to abandon years of ritual. Yet 90% of modern jobs in tech and finance care more about your results than your degree. In fields like marketing and management, a shadow resume of actual achievements beats a framed diploma every time. The ritual is a mask, but the market only rewards those who can actually solve complex, real-world problems. These cartels know that if anyone could prove their worth, the price of their credentials would collapse. They prioritize the ritual over the result to maintain a monopoly on high-paying and prestigious professional roles. You are being told to wait for permission while the world is actually desperate for your unique skills. To bypass the gatekeepers, you must adopt a beginner's mind and focus entirely on producing undeniable value. They have built a massive moat, but it is time to look at the only way to swim across. There is a second resume you own that you have never even written down before today. While the credentialed class polishes their paper records, you are building something far more valuable for yourself. Their paper resume is a carefully crafted list of elite names like Harvard, Yale, and Oxford. These prestigious institutions serve as filters, designed by gatekeepers to ensure a high level of institutional compliance. Securing a coveted role at McKinsey signals that you are willing to follow the established rules perfectly. To the system, these expensive degrees are nothing more than a signal of your professional and institutional obedience. But beneath that surface lies your shadow resume, the hidden record of every hardship you have survived. Your shadow resume is not about where you were accepted, but what you have built from zero. It tracks the long nights of endurance and the difficult projects that the credentialed class would never touch. While they relied on fortuna and lucky placement, you relied on your own raw virtue to find success. This shadow record represents an internal locus of control that no university degree can ever truly provide. A paper resume signals compliance, but the shadow resume signals your actual capacity to perform under pressure. When the world descends into chaos, the famous names on a paper resume begin to lose their luster. When the system breaks, who will people actually call to fix the complex problems that suddenly arise? In a crisis, a decorative trophy from Yale is useless compared to a functional and hard-earned scar. A Machiavellian perspective reveals that titles are fragile, but true capacity is an unbreakable and permanent asset. Do not fall for the sunk cost fallacy of chasing credentials that only prove you can obey others. Approach every challenge with a beginner's mind, focusing on results rather than institutional approval or social status. What have you built from zero that proves you can thrive even when the safety net disappears? This is the fundamental difference between those who follow the map and those who must build it. Your ability to endure and create under pressure is the only asset that truly matters in the end. In the real world, your projects speak louder than any letterhead from a prestige firm ever could. Your shadow resume is your ultimate secret weapon against a system that demands your total and complete compliance. They have their paper resume, but you possess the grit required to navigate through any coming storm. The shadow resume isn't about where you were accepted. It is about what you have finally survived. Your shadow resume is the secret map of every professional storm you have braved alone. It records everything you built from zero when the world offered you absolutely no help. While the credentialed class relies on titles, you rely on the raw power of your endurance. A standard paper resume merely signals your compliance to a system that demands your obedience. But your shadow resume reveals your true capacity to solve problems when the lights go out. This is a Machiavellian truth that the gatekeepers are desperate to keep hidden from you. Most people rely on fortuna, the blind luck of being born into the right institution. You, however, must cultivate virtue, the internal strength, to master your own destiny through action. Institutional status is a fragile gift that can be revoked by the masters at any moment. Status built on raw ability is a permanent fortress that no gatekeeper can ever tear down. To build this fortress, you must develop an internal locus of control that ignores external validation. Stop waiting for a permission slip and start hunting for projects with high stakes and higher risks. Approach every new challenge with a beginner's mind, unburdened by the scripts of the past. Every public proof of work you create becomes a brick in your wall of undeniable competence. Don't let the sunk cost fallacy trap you in a system that no longer serves you. High-stakes projects are the ultimate crucible where your shadow resume is forged in the fire. True capacity isn't something you are given. It is something you take through relentless effort. When you build from zero, you create a legacy that is entirely and dangerously your own. The gatekeepers cannot fire you from a reputation you built with your own two hands. Now you are no longer just a candidate. You are a force they cannot afford to ignore. If you feel lonely on this path, good. It means you are finally thinking for yourself. Building your shadow resume is a solitary act that separates you from the comfortable, credentialed class. Most people cling to their degrees because they are trapped by the crushing weight of sunk cost fallacy. While they seek safety in numbers, you are out in the wild, being forged like a sharp blade. In this furnace of self-education, you transform raw talent into the Machiavellian strength of true virtue. Classrooms can grant you permission, but they can never teach you a true internal locus of control. To innovate like a master, you must first reclaim what the Japanese masters call shozen. This beginner's mind is the secret source of innovation that traditional gatekeepers have long since forgotten. When was the last time you looked at a complex problem with entirely fresh eyes? The credentialed class sees only the rules, while the outlier sees the world as it truly is. They rely on the system's fortuna, but you rely on the skill you built in the shadows. This isolation isn't a sign of failure. It is the prerequisite for achieving absolute psychological freedom. Schools teach you how to wait for instructions, but the wild demands that you take action. Developing an internal locus of control means you no longer require a gatekeeper's nod to begin. With shozen, every obstacle becomes a new lesson rather than a threat to your established status. Your shadow resume grows strongest in these moments of doubt when no one is watching you. True power is not found in a crowded lecture hall. It is forged in the silence of self-reliance. Can any classroom truly teach you how to stand alone when the storm finally arrives? This stoic wisdom is the ultimate advantage in a world obsessed with hollow, paper-thin credentials. Do not fear the quiet, for this isolation is where your real power is finally forged. That forged power now faces a massive wall, built by institutions designed to fear your very existence. Educational institutions do not prioritize teaching you how to think. They teach you how to function within hierarchies. Within these walls, the credentialed class learns that survival means following the rules, not breaking them. The system rewards the safety of being right according to a handbook, rather than finding the truth. These gatekeepers have turned the pursuit of knowledge into a rigid performance of compliance and predictable results. It is a Machiavellian trap where the appearance of competence is more valuable than actual transformative skill. While they seek security in the hierarchy, you are hunting for something far more potent and dangerous. You are seeking shozen, the beginner's mind that serves as the ultimate source of all true innovation. This state of mind allows you to see possibilities where the credentialed class only sees established boundaries. Innovation requires the constant risk of being wrong, a gamble the modern school system cannot afford. In a hierarchy, failure is a stain on your record. In the wild, failure is your greatest teacher. Your internal locus of control thrives on the very uncertainty that makes the institutional mind tremble. Most people are paralyzed by the sunk cost fallacy, clinging to degrees that no longer serve them. They rely on the fortuna of the system, while you build the virtue to master your own fate. Every mistake you make adds an invisible, powerful layer to your growing and resilient shadow resume. The beginner's mind does not fear looking foolish because it knows that labels are just a temporary mask. True innovation cannot be scheduled or graded. It erupts when you stop asking for permission to explore. The school system is a factory of answers, but the real world only rewards those with questions. Being right according to the rules is a cage that prevents you from ever being truly great. To master the beginner's mind, you must first unlearn the institutional habit of seeking the gold star. Shift your focus from the safety of the herd to the raw potential of the unknown path. Expertise without shozen is just a fossilized way of seeing a world that is constantly changing. Do not let their rigid hierarchies convince you that your lack of a title is a weakness. In the arena of innovation, the beginner who dares to be wrong will always outpace the expert. Your willingness to embrace this uncertainty is the hidden key that unlocks every door they guard. We often confuse the description of the world for the actual world itself in this modern age. A $200,000 map is useless if you have never actually touched the dirt beneath your feet. We are taught to worship the ink and paper while the real world shifts beneath our feet. For 4 long years, students study the lines of a map drawn by someone else's hand. This expensive credential promised a safe passage that the modern market no longer truly provides. While the classroom offers a controlled environment, the terrain of reality remains wild and unpredictable. You are not just learning a subject. You are learning how to navigate through a storm. The self-taught individual understands that the terrain is the only teacher that never lies to you. Instead of waiting for permission, you must develop the Machiavellian instinct to recognize true opportunity. This is where the battle between virtue and fortuna determines who survives and who merely exists. Your shadow resume is built here, in the mud and the grit of real-world problem-solving. Meanwhile, the credentialed class clings to their outdated charts like they are holy scripture. They have invested too much time and money to admit the map might be completely wrong. This is the sunk cost fallacy in action, blinding the elite to the reality of the market. When you spend $200,000 on a degree, you are buying a belief system. To admit the degree is obsolete would be to admit 4 years of life were wasted. Gatekeepers defend the walls of their institutions because they fear your internal locus of control. They want you to believe that the map is the only thing keeping you from falling. But the beginner's mind sees through the ritual and recognizes the terrain for what it is. You are walking the path while they are busy arguing about the color of the ink. The market does not care about your pedigree. It only cares if you can solve its problems. Are you following a dusty map, or are you actually looking at the world in front of you? How much would you pay to keep believing a lie that keeps you safely behind a desk? The credentialed class has sacrificed their intuition at the altar of institutional validation. By the time they finish their 4-year ritual, the world they studied has already vanished. You, however, are moving in real time, adapting your shadow resume to every new challenge. This direct contact with reality builds a strength that no university can ever hope to manufacture. You are exposing their fragility simply by succeeding without their blessing or their expensive maps. The sunk cost fallacy is a cage they built for themselves with their own tuition checks. But why do they cling to the map when the world is clearly proving them wrong? The answer lies in a psychological trap that binds the credentialed class to their outdated maps. This isn't just about pride. It is about the massive, staggering price they paid for admission. Consider the sheer weight of a traditional degree, often costing well over $200,000 today. Beyond the money, they sacrificed 4 of their most energetic years to obtain a single paper certificate. When you invest that much life and capital, admitting the map is wrong becomes emotionally impossible. This psychological prison is known as the sunk cost fallacy, and it governs the entire elite establishment. To the credentialed class, your success without their expensive map feels like a direct personal insult. They have built their entire identity upon a foundation that you are proving is increasingly irrelevant. Gatekeepers guard these hollow halls because they cannot face the reality of their own wasted investment. They utilize the sunk cost fallacy as a social defense mechanism to protect their perceived authority. This is why you face such fierce resistance when you show up with your shadow resume instead. Your shadow resume represents the raw power of virtue, while they rely solely on institutional fortuna. While they were following the map, you were actually learning the terrain through trial and error. They fear your beginner's mind because it sees the shortcuts they were never allowed to take. In their eyes, if you can succeed for free, then their expensive education was a mistake. To justify their 4-year sacrifice, they must insist that your self-taught path is inherently dangerous. This Machiavellian tactic ensures they remain the only authorized guides to a world they don't understand. You represent a threat to the very economy of permission that keeps their status symbols valuable. Their internal locus of control has been traded for a badge of approval from a dying system. Every time you bypass a gatekeeper, you expose the terrifying truth that the map is broken. They aren't defending the truth. They are defending the $200,000 they can't get back. This is the invisible wall you hit whenever you challenge someone with a prestigious institutional pedigree. Understand that their anger is actually a form of grief for the time they can never reclaim. By recognizing this fallacy, you gain the psychological edge needed to navigate their institutional minefields. You are not an imposter. You are simply the only person in the room without sunken costs. While they cling to the ghost of their investment, you are free to pivot with the market. They are anchored to the past, while your shadow resume allows you to build the future today. Never mistake their desperate defense of the map for a genuine understanding of the actual terrain. The credentialed class is trapped in a ritual of justification that you have already escaped. Your path requires a different kind of courage, the bravery to walk without a permission slip. The map is failing because the terrain has shifted completely beneath the feet of the credentialed class. A bedroom in Lagos has more access to truth than a 19th century king ever dreamed possible. Geography no longer dictates your destiny because the internet has become the ultimate borderless equalizer. In Nigeria, a student in Lagos accesses the exact same physics information as an elite MIT scholar. The digital world has turned the once exclusive fortress of knowledge into a public park for the curious. This shift represents a massive bypass around the traditional gatekeepers who once controlled your professional path. You no longer need a publisher's approval to share your ideas with a global waiting audience. Record labels and hiring managers are finding their roles increasingly irrelevant in this direct-to-market era. The Machiavellian power once held by institutions is dissolving as individuals take back their own agency. If knowledge is truly free today, what exactly are you paying $200,000 for? You are witnessing the absolute collapse of the ritual designed to protect a hidden professional cartel. The beginner's mind thrives when it realizes that permission is a relic of an outdated era. Why wait for a firm to hire you when you can build your own empire online? Your internal locus of control is your greatest asset in a world without traditional gates or doormen. The internet provides a digital bypass around the high walls of the status quo credentialed class. Virtu versus Fortuna is no longer about luck. It is about your drive to learn. We are moving past the performance of schooling into a reality of pure, unadulterated skill acquisition. Traditional doormen are still guarding the front entrance, but the walls have already crumbled around them. You have the power to reach the market directly without seeking a nod from any hiring manager. This new world rewards those who stop waiting for permission and start building their own shadow resume. The sunk cost fallacy keeps others trapped in debt while you gain the world for free. Your curiosity is the only currency you need to unlock the greatest libraries in human history. We are entering an age where the outlier is the only one who truly survives and thrives. The old gatekeepers are screaming because they no longer possess the power to silence your voice. This digital revolution is the most significant shift in power since the invention of the printing press. Have you ever been silenced by a word you didn't understand? That wasn't a conversation, it was an attack. The credentialed class has one final defense mechanism to guard their crumbling gates: the weaponization of academic jargon. They use complex language like a smokescreen to hide their inability to produce actual, tangible results. Is their jargon a tool for clarity, or simply a weapon designed for your strategic social exclusion? Watch as they drop names like Foucault or the Keynesian cross to assert dominance in the room. These academic references aren't meant to enlighten you. They are designed to make you feel intellectually small. This is the Machiavellian reality of modern discourse, where words are used as subtle instruments of power. When a gatekeeper pulls an obscure theory from their sleeve, they are testing your immediate intellectual submissiveness. Do not fall for the trap of trying to speak their language just to prove your own worth. Your shadow resume doesn't need a glossary of pretentious terms to demonstrate its true professional value. Remember that any status granted by an institution can be revoked by that same institution at any time. They hold the keys to their own kingdom, but they have no power over your internal locus. When you rely on their titles, you remain a hostage to their ever-shifting rules and credentialed requirements. However, status built on raw ability is a fortress that no dean or director can ever dismantle. This is the essence of virtu over fortuna, where your own skill dictates your ultimate success. Why argue with the ghost of a dead philosopher when you can build a giant in the present? The credentialed class suffers from a sunk cost fallacy, clinging to expensive words that yield no profit. Your beginner-as mind sees through the linguistic fog to the simple mechanics of how things actually work. While they debate the nuances of social theory, you should be busy building something that actually functions. Raw results are the only universal language that every market and industry understands without a translator. When you deliver undeniable value, the weaponized jargon of the elite suddenly loses all its piercing power. You don't need their permission to be right. You only need the evidence of your own execution. Stop seeking the approval of people who are more afraid of your potential than your supposed ignorance. Their academic barriers are illusions meant to distract you from the fact that you are already winning. Silence the critics not with a better argument, but with a more successful reality than theirs. Real power comes from what you can do, not from the complex words you use to describe it. The terrain has shifted, and your ability to navigate it is worth more than any fancy map. You don't need to win the academic argument, you just need to dominate the open market. Leave the jargon to the gatekeepers while you reclaim the world with your own two hands. The walls have collapsed, and now only your raw ability will determine how far you can go. The era of the obedient is ending, and the era of the adaptable has finally begun. The world is moving faster than any outdated curriculum can possibly hope to update itself. In stable times, the obedient inherit the earth, but in chaotic times, the adaptable take charge. When the ground shifts, those who wait for permission are buried by the systems they trusted. History has shifted from an aristocracy of blood where your lineage determined your entire life's worth. We then moved into an aristocracy of paper where a degree was the ultimate gatekeeping credential. Now we are entering the aristocracy of competence, where raw ability is the only currency that matters. The credentialed class is paralyzed by a world that no longer follows their carefully printed maps. They cling to their status because their sunk cost prevents them from seeing the shifting terrain. In a violent storm, do you want the man with the degree or the man who can sail? The monopoly on knowledge has finally shattered, leaving the ruins of old institutions in its wake. Your shadow resume is now more valuable than any gold-embossed certificate gathering dust on a wall. This is the era of virtue, where individual skill overcomes the random cruelty of fortune and chaos. This Machiavellian shift marks the end of inherited status and the beginning of earned power. True power now resides within those who possess an internal locus of control and raw curiosity. The self-taught are no longer outsiders. They are the new nobility of a rapidly changing landscape. You are witnessing the birth of a new elite, forged in the fires of self-directed mastery. Which side of history will you be on when the paper burns and only competence remains? The earth belongs to those who can build, not those who merely have permission to try. The walls of the ivory tower are crumbling under the weight of their own irrelevance. While the obedient study the past, the adaptable are busy building the future right now. This transition is inevitable, moving from the safety of rituals to the necessity of results. You don't need a seat at their table when you are building your own empire. As the gatekeepers lose their grip, the hierarchy of merit begins to rebuild itself from scratch. The old rituals are dying, and the age of the adaptable outlier has officially arrived. Prepare yourself, because this is the unstoppable rise of the ultimate aristocracy of competence. To understand where we are going, we must first look back at how power began. Long ago, your status was determined entirely by the blood flowing through your family veins. This was the first aristocracy, where power was inherited rather than earned by the individual. Eventually, the world shifted and the influence of bloodlines began to fade into the past. In its place rose a new system governed by institutional seals and the credentialed class. Society traded the family name for the paper degree, believing certifications equaled true capability. This second aristocracy of paper thrived during long periods of predictable institutional stability. During these quiet times, the obedient were rewarded for following the established maps of success. However, the map is not the terrain, and modern reality has become increasingly unpredictable. When chaos arrives, the old gatekeepers find their paper walls offer no protection against reality. We have entered an era where the rigid structures of the past are rapidly dissolving. In this modern age of chaos, the ancient rules of the credentialed class no longer apply. While stable times favor the obedient, it is the adaptable who truly inherit the earth. This shift represents the final evolution from blood and paper to raw, undeniable ability. You are witnessing the birth of the third and final power structure, the aristocracy of competence. Here, your internal locus of control matters far more than any title on a business card. The Machiavellian reality is that fortune favors those who possess the virtue to act decisively. While others cling to the sunk cost fallacy of their degrees, you build your capacity. Your shadow resume records the battles you won when the formal system had no answers. By maintaining a beginner's mind, you remain flexible while the institutional experts remain brittle. This isn't about permission anymore. It is about the cold, hard reality of what you can do. The hierarchy of the future rewards the outliers who solve problems rather than follow rituals. Power has finally returned to the hands of those who can actually navigate the storm. You are no longer a subject of the gatekeepers, but a master of your own destiny. This is the rise of a new elite defined only by their skill and results. But how do you navigate their world until you have finally built your own version of reality? If you want to win, you have to speak their language while you take their territory. Entering the boardroom requires more than skill. It requires a calculated and almost Machiavellian presence. You must understand that the credentialed class uses jargon as a barrier to protect their status. By mastering their dialect, you transform their gatekeeper's lock into a wide-open door for yourself. Think of your shadow resume as a hidden arsenal that you carry into every high-stakes meeting. While they argue over paper degrees, you focus on delivering results with a truly savage efficiency. Elite individuals often hire their own kind to maintain the comfort of a familiar and safe hierarchy. However, the most ambitious leaders will always prioritize competence over the empty promises of a resume. You are no longer a victim of their rules. You are a player mastering their complex game. Your internal locus of control allows you to remain steady while the credentialed class panics around you. Avoid the sunk cost fallacy that keeps your peers trapped in outdated systems and dying industries. Balance the concepts of virtue and fortuna as you seize opportunities the gatekeepers never saw coming. Every word you speak should be a strategic move designed to dismantle their institutional walls from within. Are you ready to stop playing by their rules and start defining the future on your terms? Will you choose to join the new architects or remain among the ranks of the managed? This transition from student to strategist requires a deeper understanding of the human psychological landscape. To master these advanced dark psychology tactics, you must look beyond the standard and public curriculum. There is a level of knowledge reserved only for those who are truly willing to see. Look for the join button on this platform to unlock the exclusive and uncensored architect level. Within this inner circle, we explore the sharpest edges of strategy and deep psychological influence. Click the join button now to enter the architect level and finally claim your rightful place. I will see you on the inside as we build a world far beyond their tired gates.